Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful January the 21st, 2020. Ground of the Portes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, we're less than a month away from the pitchers and catchers reporting the spring training in baseball. I guess it's going to warm up soon.
Yeah, I guess it's going to warm up soon. I hope the fastball is still smoking. I was just watching a program not too long ago, and it had Charlie Sheen in it, and it had some good old boys playing baseball in Cleveland. I can't remember the name of the movie, but it made me laugh a lot. Big C, there's so much from marketing that show. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars. Big C Sports, powered by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our national sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you got to have a smart TV. That means the TVs can read too. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, for a long time, Charlton, I've known my TVs have always been smarter than me for years.
Yep.
As I got new electronics, I'd always call one of my kids, hey, can you come see me? And as soon as they walk in, I'd pass them a remote control or a manual and get this taken care of.
Yeah, so
Less than 5 minutes, they're leaving me again.
So this new technology is not really new to you, Big C. It's all fair and love and war. I want to say, after Martin Luther King Day, really appreciate just all the people all over the universe talking about how great a person Dr. Martin Luther King was and still is in the minds of many people. I want to make sure we give out our national suicide hotline number. There's a lot of veterans that need help. They don't need our thoughts and prayers. They need help. 800-273. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255, and they can get some help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, just like Martin Luther King Day, Charlton, Veterans Day is only celebrated one day in this great nation. But most of those situations, Charlton, mean so much to Americans everywhere.
Yep.
You know, what Martin Luther King did for the advancement of African Americans, Charlton, and what the veterans have done for the sovereignty of this great country. We have to find a way to stem veteran suicide in this country, Charlton. It is reaching a horrific number of 19 a day. And so there's need to be an answer to that. I know we give out the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, but many veterans don't have access to phone services, Charlton. So that needs to be something that's also addressed, is how do you get phone service into the hands of many of those veterans so that they can call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number when they need help. And
they can always get some help. They just got to have the number 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. And there's always help when people need it. You know, just thinking about this wonderful time of year after the holidays, bowl games are just like a tradition. We have even how the universe, and even the help with Ronald Reagan when he passed Martin Luther King, holiday and signed that into legislation, Big C, back in '83 and fully accepted in '86. Just happened to be after we had the NFC and the AFC championship game, we had celebration for the great Dr. King. Isn't it amazing how the universe aligns good things, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, celebrations abound in America, Charlton. To have that festive event going on in the AFC, NFC, and then the next day you're able to celebrate with family and friends at the memory of one of the greatest leaders in American history, Charlton. Even though he has not always gotten the accolades that he deserves, it's always going to continue coming.
Yeah, it always comes. And so I just really appreciate you. Really get the chance to appreciate as you grow up and you look around and you want to know who's on your team. We always celebrate what team is going to win the national championship game. We're going to celebrate what team is going to win the NCAA, March Madness. What team is going to win the NFL, the Super Bowl or the NBA championship. Who's going to win the World Series? We're always talking about teams. And I just want to be appreciative of knowing who's on my team, which is family and of course, my mother. Just love saying that because sometimes we put so much emphasis on people we don't even know. I was watching this program not too long ago, and ironic, how the universe brings things together. I was just telling you about some good old boys. You were saying what we're going to do without football because, we got a whole week before the AFC and NFC championship game. And I said I saw this commercial that had Jerome Bettis, and he was on a commercial where they were playing some good old boys, and they beat him like 49-0. They couldn't tackle Jerome Bettis. It was flag football. Well, I was watching some TV with my mother, and I saw Jerome Bettis on TV. Big C, what a small world, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about many athletes, Charlton. It's hard for them to walk away from the game, and you want to stay involved in any way that you can. So I guess if you're going out and playing flag football game against a bunch of the neighborhood guys, Charlton, that have those 9 six-packs that's been sitting up on the couch, this is what you do.
Yeah, when you got a six-pack in the NFL, it means your abdominal muscle. You got a six-pack outside of the game is probably something you can hold to your hands. We talk so much about athletes and how athletes are marketed throughout the country, Big C. And I want to think of 7 of the top 10 merchandise selling players in the NFL. And this goes all the way back, like farmers, they plant their seeds in fertile soil so it can produce a good harvest. Well, the college football world is laden with seeds that are producing $1 billion, but it's not for the people that are producing it. It's for people who are planting it and stealing that money. They're stealing money, Big C. That's going to change hopefully soon. But 7 of the top 10 merchandising selling players in the NFL, would you believe they're African-American, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's not hard to follow. When you think about the league's composite, which is about 72-73% African-American, it's only right that 70% of the merchandise is really pushed out by African-American players, Charlton. When you think about going into the Super Bowl and you think about the posters that everybody are putting up.
Yeah.
Who had the biggest weekend this past week in the 2 championship games? 2 African-American players, Charlton. Raheem Mostert and Patrick Mahomes. Those players are leading the way. They're the billboard carriers for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they really are. And the next player is ironic because I was watching a program. It had Peyton Manning, who's done a good job being given the opportunity to go out and market everything. And he was having a conversation with Doug Williams. Doug Williams threw for more touchdowns in the Super Bowl than the great Peyton Manning, Big C. But Doug Williams, even though he won the Super Bowl beating the Broncos back in the day, I don't think he went to Disneyland. I don't recall him making any commercials. I don't recall him getting any endorsements. And I believe he's had a better performance in the Super Bowl than Peyton Manning had in any of his Super Bowls. But Peyton, you can't get him off of TV. So to me, it was ironic to see both of those men talking. It was on Peyton Manning's show as he's going around getting opportunities. Why Peyton, who never set a record in the Super Bowl, getting more opportunities than a similar moment? The first African-American quarterback allowed to start in a Super Bowl game. We know Joe Gilliam could have been earlier, but they pulled him for Terry Bradshaw. That make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you have to look at the marketing in Madison Avenue of Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning has always had that squeaky clean image. He's always been thought of as the first family of the NFL, Charlton. And he's been a great spokesperson throughout his career as a player and as a non-player. When you look at what Doug Williams did, Charlton, America's never going to be ready for that, to be a black quarterback to carry the mantra. I mean, we see Patty Mahomes right now doing what he's doing with some State Farm commercials, and more African-Americans are getting opportunities for Madison Avenue advertising. But at the time when Doug Williams did his historic performance at the Super Bowl, it was against John Elway, the person that everybody wanted to make the poster face of the NFL. And it just didn't happen, and Doug Williams did something that America wasn't ready for, nor was advertising ready for.
Isn't that amazing? If Manning had thrown 5 touchdown passes in a Super Bowl, imagine what he's getting now. I think the most they ever had was 2, and I might be wrong about that. But, I mean, that's just amazing when you look at that. So the great Patrick Mahomes, we know he's doing the discount double check commercials. He'll have to appear without his friend, Aaron Rodgers. But then also a player that, for the most part, he's really being treated like he's African-American, at least when it comes to contract. Tom Brady, you would have thought that the New England Patriots would have already said, look, how much money do you want to stay, Tom? We'll give you 2 more years. If you treat someone like your son, wouldn't you treat your son better than some other kid? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's a checks and balances when you get to Tom Brady at this point of his career. How do you make it work financially with the salary cap? Reason why Brady hasn't signed yet with the New England Patriots is because the new collective bargain agreement has not come, where there's going to be an increase in money given to the players. The deal with Brady is going to get done.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people saying, well, he'll go elsewhere. But you got to also look at a lot of veteran quarterbacks, Charlton, who went elsewhere.
Yeah.
How did it end up for them? Did they end up in the Super Bowl other than Peyton Manning? No.
No, it'd be nice. Just the right thing to do is let him retire as a New England Patriot, Big C. Another player, as we talk about the top 10 merchandise selling players in the NFL, African-American, we know these guys will not get an opportunity for a job as a head coach. We know that for sure. And number 3 on the list, Ezekiel Elliott. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, been a dominant runner ever since he's been in the NFL, Charlton. But as you look at running backs who were the top rushers in the league, only Derrick Henry of the top rushers in the league got to the playoffs, Charlton. And when you think about Ezekiel Elliott, that money didn't equate to, his production on the field this year, getting his team into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a very well said, Big C. Another player, when it comes to players that are well marketed, players are really their own entities, their own corporations. A guy that hasn't won anything yet and hasn't even made a playoff game, but he played in the same conference as the great Patrick Mahomes, and I think he has been marketed more than any quarterback over the last year outside of the retired Peyton Manning, Big C. That would be number 4 on the list, the great Baker Mayfield, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, at times, Charlton, that comes along with being the number 1 overall draft pick in the NFL and how you position yourself. Baker Mayfield has done a marvelous job of marketing himself on and off the field. He's enough, when you think about his jersey and merchandising, number 4 in the NFL, and he's leading all quarterbacks in commercial advertising other than Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, he has one, and it says, well, he's trying to find which light socket turns on the stadium lights because he couldn't figure it out, Big Z. And I think the Cleveland Browns are still trying to figure out which quarterback is going to turn on their electric also, Big Z. Another player that just had, I guess he went in for a little bit of a checkup today and everything came out fine. But that's the great Odell Beckham Jr. And he's much maligned by media because he was beating up the kicking net in New York on the sideline, just being a little bit frustrated. Wasn't beating his wife 20 times, that got a kicker a $2 million raise. One of the reasons that I think Odell was left the Giants is because they built up this negative enmity against him, but he's still a star athlete. But he's number 5 when it comes to merchandising in the NFL, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he's been a big pusher of merchandising, Charlton. His performance has lapsed on the field, I think, because he's trying to keep pace with Baker Mayfield of being the most popular person in Cleveland.
Yeah. Well, we don't know if that's going to happen, and Cleveland's going to wrap their arms around the great Baker Mayfield unless they don't make the playoffs maybe next year, Big C. We talk about respect, and the new agreement that's coming into play, I think it applies to Tom Brady, of course, but it also applies to the great Dak Prescott. Jerry Jones is a smart man. Anyone who knows how to make $1 billion, even though it's an oil money and other business, that man knows what he's doing. So who's to tell Jerry Jones, how to make money and move numbers around on his spreadsheet, Big C? But the great Dak Prescott, I know he sells a lot of chunky soup, Big C. He and his brothers appreciate that when he gets his family involved in commercial. But the great Dak Prescott, number 6 on the list, merchandising, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Dak has done everything right since being in the NFL, from being a model citizen to a model quarterback, being productive on and off the field. You've seen how he's grown expeditionally in Madison Avenue.
Yeah, he really has. He'll land on his feet. He'll get some money. Dallas Cowboys will most likely be in the playoffs next year. We'll see what happens because the NFC East, they're still moving some things around. It's about Philadelphia and Dallas. And if Dallas can find a way to just land on their feet and get players locked up, I think they'll be okay. When it comes to player merchandising, the top 10 selling merchandising, in the NFL, a league that's about 70% African American, 72%, somewhere in there. A defensive guy comes into this list by the great Khalil Mack. Wasn't good enough for John Gruden to stay with the Raiders, but he was good enough to be another perennial power. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Khalil Mack is still fortunate enough to be selling jerseys with two different teams, Charlton. There's still fanfare in Oakland/Las Vegas for Khalil Mack. And since he's arrived in Chicago being part of the Monsters of the Midway, he's become a fan favorite out there.
Yeah, he really has become a fan favorite out of the University of Buffalo, Big C. Another player we just saw, Discount Double Check. He actually had a decent game against the 49ers, but it can be deceptive because a lot of that's coming from behind when you have the interception, when you have the fumble, and you just have some things that just didn't look right with the great Aaron Rodgers. But he does look good in his commercials, in the Discount Double Check commercials, Big C. As far as merchandising, number 8, Aaron Rodgers, Big C.
Well, longevity and being the king of the Chiefs' hands has really helped Aaron Rodgers up in Green Bay. He's the only show in town, Charlton, that's been there for a long time, as well as his advertising on television.
Yeah, he really has. Another player that I thought, and as far as people saying he has a chance to get back to the Super Bowl, I really doubt it. I just don't think he's any closer to do it now than he was when he got there, I believe, his second year as a starter. But we'll see. It's all about the opportunities. Another player that comes up on the radar screen at number 9, the great Saquon Barkley out of Penn State University. I remember him playing in the Rose Bowl against USC a couple of years ago, Big C, and he's really a dominant kind of running back. Would love to see him run the big cat more, where they give him the ball and let him either run or pass. But Saquon Barkley, he's also selling soup. But why would his mother come to the sideline during a game and give it to him, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, that's the pluses of being in New York, the largest media market. Campbell Soup has, hitched his wagon to two of the best young players in the NFC East, in Dak Prescott and Saquon Barkley.
Another player coming out of the great University of Southern California by the name of Juju Smith-Schuster. That good old boy, not only was he a star at USC, he's been a star in the NFL for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the terrible towels are amazing. It's terrible that he used to ride a bicycle, and he already had the money cash from NFL paychecks, but he took the time to get some wheels, and now he's riding around on 4 wheels instead of 2, Big C. The great Juju Smith-Schuster, your thoughts?
Well, you got to get your driver's license generally before you get a car. He never got those while he was in college because when he came out, he was just 20 years old, drafted by the Steelers. But he has developed into a marketing genius, Charlton. We see him on many commercials as well as his jerseys, one of the top selling in Pittsburgh. Yeah,
it really is. And it's nice to see when men can pass their driver's test, get tired of taking tests. I know guys that can drive. They didn't even have a driver's license, but they could drive really well. I started driving when I was 12 years old because that's how we got down where I grew up, Big C. Speaking of players and how the 49ers are looking for another gold nugget, they already have 5. They're looking for 6, and they may get it this year. It's amazing they're a 1-point underdog in the Super Bowl. I don't think the team that wins that's going to win by 1 point. They're most likely going to win by a touchdown because both teams can score. But when it comes to the great San Francisco 49ers, which 49er quarterback has the best record in his first 25 starts? I'm going to throw out a couple of names. I'm not going back to John Brody, Big C, but I am sticking with the great Joe Montana, who's been to the Super Bowl, the great Steve Young, who's been to the Super Bowl, the great Colin Kaepernick, who's been to the Super Bowl and ostracized, and the great Jimmy Garoppolo, who will make his first Super Bowl appearance in a couple of weeks. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, all of those quarterbacks, Charlton, have taken the 49ers to the Super Bowl, but Jimmy Garoppolo has the best record in his first 25 starts of any 49er quarterback in history. He's 20-5 in his first 25 starts, Charlton, and headed to his first Super Bowl.
He's headed to his first Super Bowl, and it's amazing. I want to get your thoughts, and not that it's easy to pull up names because sometimes it's just not there to do it. But when you think about those 4 great players that won that red and gold, Big C, out here in California, I wonder which defense ranks up there with one of the best. The Joe Montana-led teams that had great defenses, Big C, or the great Steve Young. We know his defensive units were pretty stout. The great Colin Kaepernick, they had some nice defensive teams and some defensive players too. Or this unit with the great Jimmy Garoppolo. I would happen to think more along the guys with Steve Young and also the guys with Garoppolo, but I can't turn my head on the great Ronnie Lott and them good old boys. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, as an overall collective unit, this defense right now is playing much better than those defenses. It's a different form of defense back from the 80s and 90s. The game is not as violent as it once was, Charlton. Everything has been regulated where you have to play certain ways. But right now, this defensive line that they have in San Francisco is probably the best defensive line in 49er history.
Yeah, well, it's always good in Love and War. We love so much about what team was better, what era was better, but I still remember some great players. And, in fact, I broke my I guess you can call I got into the business. My first game covering NFL was the San Francisco 49ers and at the time, the Los Angeles Chargers in the preseason games. I've always been very fond of the 49ers. And speaking of the 49ers and the Kansas City Chiefs, they met back in week 3 of the preseason. It was August 24th, 2019. The 49ers actually came out with a 27-17 victory. Now, I know it's preseason, Big C. Can't really put a lot of stock in preseason, but that may have been a precursor, at least partway, of what we may be seeing coming up in the Super Bowl 54, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it's a template of what these players know about each other, Charlton. They're not naive of seeing each other. They met each other back in the preseason. And when you think about week 3, Charlton, a lot of the veterans are playing at that time.
Yeah, they are playing at that time. And ironically, you know, we talked about the great Tom Flores and how the NFL can still do it right. I've been told when I was growing up, if you do something wrong, at least go back and apologize. Nobody's perfect, not even Christ, if you believe in that. But we talked about the great Tom Flores having the second best winning record in the NFL playoffs, only to the great, Vince Lombardi, and through 10 games. Well, he should have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. And you know how people can do things right. He played on that team when they were there 50 years ago. He was on that team, Big C. He has 4 Super Bowl championships as a player, as an assistant, and then 2 as a coach, Big C, an assistant under the great John Madden, 2 as a head coach for the Oakland Raiders. You know how the gentleman came out and grandstanded with Bill Cowher and Jimmy Johnson? They were at work doing a live broadcast, and they interrupted it so he can bring out, the Super Bowl Hall of Fame or the Hall of Fame coaches induction. If the NFL's listening, and I know people listen, they can orchestrate for Goodell, Big C. Tom Flores got screwed and they know it. He got 4 rings. They can have him come out, that same big old guy that introduced Jimmy Johnson and Bill Cowher as they were at work, have Tom Flores flown in to Florida for Super Bowl 54, and for the kickoff, have him do the coin flip, and have that big old giant of a man walk out and say, Tom Flores, we didn't forget about you. Not only are we getting you in 50 years after you was last here at the Super Bowl, we are inducting you into the Pro Football Hall of Fame as a coach. Big C, that would make so much sense because the universe has justified it. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it would be a beautiful gesture, Charlton. When you think about Oakland alumni, Raider alumni.
Yeah.
John Madden has 1 Super Bowl ring as the head coach of the Oakland Raiders. Tom Flores has an assistant ring off that same team from 1977. But, John, when you think about Tom Flores, he went on to win 2 Super Bowl titles as the head coach of the Raiders. And he's not in the Hall of Fame, but yet John Madden is. Everyone thinks of him as the greatest coach in Raiders history, but he only participated in 1 Super Bowl as the coach of the Raiders.
Yeah.
You think about Kenny the Snake Stabler, the late Snake. He's in the Hall of Fame, Charlton, with 1 Super Bowl victory as the Oakland Raiders quarterback.
Yeah.
But he's only one of 4 quarterbacks, Charlton, to go to 3 championship games and lose. We talked about the other 3 yesterday.
Yeah.
And he only has 1 Super Bowl victory as a quarterback for the Raiders. Yet Jim Plunkett has 2, and he hasn't gotten a sniff.
Isn't that amazing? And just to show that Big C Sports are very prescient, you got Super Bowl 54. It's been 50 years since the great Tom Flores played in a Super Bowl. He has 4 Super Bowl championships. It's Super Bowl 54. Have that man come out and toss out the flip the coin for Super Bowl 54. 50 years since he's been in the game as a player. He has 4 Super Bowl rings, Big C. If the universe is listening, it makes so much sense. You only get so many chances to make the right play. Imagine the sea of hands if Stabler didn't make that pass and Davis dropped the pass. Imagine the catch if Montana didn't make the throw over Ed Too-Tall Jones. And imagine if Dwight Clark dropped the ball. Imagine that if the Holy Roller wasn't caught and kicked by Casper, Big C. Those things matter. The universe has lined this up. Super Bowl 54. It's been 50 years since The great Tom Flores has been there. He has 4 championship rings. I know you guys are listening. Do right by that man, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it would be a great gesture from the NFL if those bodies would come into place, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
It's amazing, but we at least advocated for it because I think it would be justified in doing that, Big C. 1 year after potentially costing the Kansas City Chiefs a trip to the Super Bowl in Atlanta, the great D Ford. You talked about Tom Flores getting a second chance. We talk about the NFL having a second chance. You only got so many chances in life to have a second chance. D Ford gets that second chance. He gets it with the 49ers, also down south, this time in Miami. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, D Ford, everyone remembers him being called for an offside play when they had gone in and picked off the ball from Tom Brady and thought that the Kansas City Chiefs had sealed the trip to the Super Bowl in Atlanta, Charlton. Unfortunately, that play was called back, and we know what happened after that. The Patriots went down and scored, took the game into overtime, and ended up on a trip to the Super Bowl. Now D Ford gets a chance of redemption. If you think about when the 49ers struggled in the latter part of the season and that pass rush wasn't there, D Ford had been hurt. Since he's been back, that defense has been lights out and complete. They've been putting nothing but consistent pressure on opposing quarterbacks.
It's amazing, and when you think about that second chance in life, and I know people are talking about second chances. You just mentioned the great D Ford. Another man with a second chance is Andy Reid. The last time he was in the Super Bowl, he was actually there with the Philadelphia Eagles and the great Donovan McNabb. I remember the great Terrell Owens had a bummed ankle, and he was still able to man up or whatever the kid, numb the pain, mind over matter, whatever it was, and he went back there, and he played, and they came up short against New England, but the great Andy Reid's also getting that second chance. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Andy Reid has been around for a long time. He has the most victories by any coach not to hoist the Super Bowl trophy, Charlton. And this is going to be one of his next bites at the ring. But you think about the team that he has right now. It's set to make many runs towards the Super Bowl. Even when he was in Philadelphia, he ended up in 5 straight NFC Championship games.
Yeah, I look forward to it. It should be a great game. The point spread is 1, Kansas City's favorite right now. I think the over-under is around 54. Both of these teams can score 30. So you got to go with the over unless we have a fiasco like last year with the Rams and the Patriots. I don't think we're going to have the winning team score less than 30 points and win this game. So I would go with the over even though I'm not a betting man. We're going to come up on what's called the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. We're going to come back and talk more about the NFL. And NFL, get Tom Flores in. It's been 50 years. He was there. Super Bowl 54. He has 4 rings. It only makes sense. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C Timeout, also known as the Big C Pause. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on the apps that I really love called Google. Or Alexa, just say Google. Or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear Welcome to the Show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. Thinking about players, thinking about Super Bowls, and thinking about championships, and how many players are loving the fact that if they're in college and they're one of the top players, they get their chance to have hope, Big C, hope that they'll be always big. So the great Patrick Mahomes, he'll become the 5th youngest quarterback to start in the Super Bowl. That's amazing. We've given up on 54 of them. He'll be the 5th youngest. That's another clue. 5 for the NFL. Tom Flores played for the Chiefs. Sometimes numbers, maybe my guy in Las Vegas, I should call my friend down in Las Vegas. There's a lot of 5s coming up in Super Bowl 54, Big C. But I want to get your thoughts on how the other quarterbacks fared. The great Dan Marino, 23 years ago. Think about that, 127 days. It was in the Super Bowl in 1985. He showed his stuff, and he was playing up at Stanford Stadium, the old Stanford Stadium, against the 49ers, who are also there again this year, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Dan Marino at that time was the youngest quarterback to ever play in a Super Bowl, Charlton. and he was the first quarterback at that time to pass for 5,000 yards in a single NFL season. He was also the league's MVP that year. That was in his second year in the league, like Patrick Mahomes did last year. But in the Super Bowl, he threw for 318 yards, 1 touchdown, but the 2 interceptions still haunted.
Yeah.
And he ended up losing to the 49ers 38-16 in that game, John.
Yeah, a lot of people lost to the 49ers. I remember that game was a little bit foggy, and it was down there in Palo Alto on the farm at Stanford Stadium. They've since torn that stadium down and downsized into another stadium there on the farm. Big C, the great Big Ben Roethlisberger, 23 years and 340 days. He was also in a Super Bowl in 2006. The great Big Ben, he's been there more than once, though, Big C. Your thoughts?
Been there more than once. This was the Seattle Seahawks' first bite at the apple, Charlton. But Ben Roethlisberger, the stage was too big for him on that day. He was only 9 for 21 as a quarterback throwing the ball, Charlton, with a paltry 123 yards, no touchdowns and 2 interceptions. But his team pulled him through with Jerome Bettis and Hines Ward. The Steelers won their Super Bowl.
Isn't that amazing? Jerome Bettis is making commercials about flag football, and Big Ben is still trying to get healthy again to get back in there and give it another try with the what they call the yellow towels, the black and yellow, the terrible towels is what they call them, Big C. They played some terrible football the last couple of years because they're always playoff or bust, it seems. I think they'll get back sometime soon. Another great quarterback, a young player, David Woodley, 24 years old, 97 days. He was in a Super Bowl back in 1983, and the final completion came with 10 minutes and 23 seconds left in the quarter. Big C, your thoughts?
That was in the second quarter. That was his final completion of the game, Charlton. David Woodley finished with 4 of 14 passing for a paltry 97 yards. He couldn't even reach 100 yards in that game. He had a touchdown, an interception, and a fumble as the Dolphins lost to the Washington Redskins 27-17, and John Riggins at that time set an NFL single-game rushing record in the Super Bowl.
Isn't that amazing how great the great John Riggins was? We thought this guy wasn't that fast. He wasn't shifty. He couldn't give you the hip and take it away, but he had that north-south running ability. That's why your quarterback can throw for under 100 yards, and you can still get it done. Here's a player also out of California, out of northern, I guess the North Bay, Big C, named Jared Goff. Went to Cal Berkeley. I always thought he could eat more chunky soup. He's someone that might want to hit the weight room a little bit more. We'll see. But Jared Goff, he's 24 years, 112 days old, and he was in the Super Bowl just last year. And of all the time that we spend money on players and talking about who's going to be great, he did not have his best performance in the biggest game, Big C. Your thoughts?
But he was able to get the Rams to the Super Bowl, Charlton. That was his biggest feat. He came up against probably the greatest quarterback of all time in the Super Bowl era, Tom Brady. He went just 19 for 38 in the game, 229 yards, Charlton, with an interception. But he was sacked 4 times in the game. The pressure of the Patriots were relentless. He had to drop a couple of balls in the end zones, and the Rams came up short.
The Rams came up short, and I know when you talk about football, especially on the West Coast, I would say that the toughest conference has to be the NFC West. And just the fact that the 49ers are in the Super Bowl this year from a 4-win season last year. The Rams were in the Super Bowl last year, and they're out of it this year. And then you look at the Seattle Seahawks. They're always flirting with the Super Bowl, but they've been there in the last, half decade, Big C. Their final one coming against the New England Patriots, and one that they should have won. And then the Arizona Cardinals, they've also been in the Super Bowl in the last 15 years. So every team in the NFC West has been to the Super Bowl. I want to just bring up some names of some great quarterbacks that have also, played in some Super Bowl games too, Big C, and just get your thoughts. The great Len Dawson, also the great Jim Plunkett, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, when you think about those quarterbacks, they were traded. They did not end up with their original teams and making it to the Super Bowl, and they had an opportunity to play for the Vince Lombardi Trophy.
Had that opportunity to play for that Vince Lombardi Trophy. We just talked about the great Doug Williams and being, the seminal moments happen in life, like landing on the moon. That's a seminal moment. Could you imagine if they did not record the lunar landing on the moon? In fact, who was on the moon recorded anyway? That's what I want to ask. A lot of kids ask me, if they landed on the moon, who was there watching the landing and the dust come up? Hey, it's all fair love and war. But the great Doug Williams and also the great Steve Young, Big C, they both played for Tampa at one time. Your thoughts?
These are migrants also, Charlton, that made it to the Super Bowl from away from their original draft team.
Yeah, they sure did. And it's been a long, long road for those two great players. The great Brett Favre, also the great Kurt Warner. I guess Kurt had a more difficult route, but he still has a Super Bowl ring. Big C, your thoughts?
He did. Brett Favre, Kurt Warner, they were teammates in Green Bay together.
Yep, teammates in Green Bay. The great Trent Dilfer out of Fresno State, and then Brad Johnson. They also have some Super Bowl experience. Big C, your thoughts?
They did. Brad Johnson was a migrant from Minnesota. Trent Dilfer also spent some time in Tampa Bay. The great Drew Brees and the great Peyton Manning, two quarterbacks. I mean, will Brees have as many commercials as Peyton Manning? I heard Peyton Manning talking about Omaha, and pigs in a blanket and all kind of things at the line of scrimmage. And he said sometimes he was just talking, it didn't mean anything, but it would just confuse the defensive guys. Are defensive guys confused when they hear Omaha, pigs in a blanket? Big C, your thoughts? Well, you try to find the tendencies of what a quarterback do. We hear so much about the cheating going on in the NFL and Major League Baseball. You're trying to get a quarterback to tip his hands and listen to his signals and see if it has any repetition about it.
But is it really that simple? Because we know for the offensive line, the center is the quarterback for the lineman. So whatever the center's saying, it's relating to the centers. He's not talking to the wide receivers or the running backs. Quarterbacks talking to the wide receivers and running backs. So if a quarterback can say Omaha or pigs in a blanket, and that stirs up the defense, have you ever heard offensive linemen saying something that fooled you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, they talk just as much as the quarterback doing it. If you were watching the AFC Championship game on Sunday, you could see whenever the center for the Tennessee Titans would make a certain call that the Kansas City Chiefs defensive linemen were shifting into that, Charlton, and they were stopping Derrick Henry.
Yeah, that's very true. The final one, the great Nick Foles. Talk about getting the chance. All we ask is a chance. That's oftentimes in life you only get so many chances to do what you really love. The great Nick Foles, he got an opportunity, and he got a Super Bowl, and after that they shipped him out of town. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at the list of quarterbacks you just went through, Len Dawson, Jim Plunkett, Doug Williams, Steve Young, Brett Favre, Kurt Warner, Trent Dilfer, Brad Johnson, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Nick Foles, Charlton, all of these quarterbacks were traded in their NFL career. And when they were traded to the team that they went on to win a Super Bowl with, Jimmy Garoppolo is the next quarterback on that list to have been traded from his original draft team and now having a potential opportunity to win the Super Bowl in a week and a half down in Miami.
Isn't that amazing? It's about opportunity, Big C. There was a time when players were drafted into the NFL and they had to come onto the scene, and oftentimes they would have to wait 2 or 3 years, like Aaron Rodgers had to wait a couple of years for the great Brett Favre to be told, well, you're not welcome anymore, Big C. And now you have a lot more players coming in and starting after just one season. Their 99 underclassmen have declared for the 2020 NFL Draft. Big C, it's the first time in 3 seasons that fewer than 100 underclassmen have declared for the draft. 106 players declared for the draft in 2018, and 103 players declared for the draft in 2019. Why are we seeing players stay in school a little bit longer, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, as players have started to understand, Charlton, yes, there's 256 slot positions in the NFL draft. There's not going to be 256 players that make teams in the NFL. On average, there's 150 to 170 players make teams each year, Charlton, and every time that a new player makes a team, somebody's losing a job. So I think players become more, intelligent as we're looking at it now to say, let me get a little more deeper into this education. And if the NFL is there for me, it'll be there for me next year.
If it's there, it'll be there next year. And with that in mind, when I hear so many players, even going from the high school level, and I want to talk about some high school players coming up in a little bit, this thing I want to get your thoughts on. I know people got to sell products. Universities got to sell their program. But when a parent, think about this, when a parent has a child that gets a scholarship and they go off to a major university, one of the main things that we see is the announcement for what football program or basketball program they're going to play for. It's never really a talk about academically what they want to be when they earn their degree. And it's just amazing as you talk to me about how many there are fewer players now try to declare for the draft. I mean, it's not a large number, but are more people taking education more serious, or is it the fact that they realize if they don't make it, they're out of the business? Big C, your thoughts?
They know that's their last bite at the apple, Charlton. If they declare early and they're not drafted, a lot of them are looking at the draft grade that they basically slotted in. You can get bad representation, and a lot of players have, where they sit there, oh, you're a first-round pick, all of a sudden you're a sixth-round pick, you're a fifth-round pick, Charlton, or you're a mid-round pick, and all of a sudden you're in that free agent market where you're not guaranteed anything, a very minimal signing bonus.
Yeah.
So I think a lot more players are becoming aware of that and not paying so much attention to the sports highlight shows.
Well, it's just like helicopters. Sometimes you got to land on the right, on the X. And like a quarterback or even any other player, you got to land on an X. You got to figure out if it's worth it coming out early or staying. And when we talk about a guy that won a Super Bowl championship and the great Nick Foles, and they said, well, we're going to get rid of you. They wanted Carson Wentz. Last I called, Carson still hasn't won a playoff game. Isn't that something? The guy that you sent Nick Foles packing for still has not won you a playoff game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's the chance you take in the NFL when you say you want a franchise quarterback. We did a show a few days ago, Charlton, where we talked about the number of quarterbacks in the playoffs that weren't the number one overall pick in the draft.
Yep.
And Jimmy Garoppolo was a second-round pick that has been traded. Ryan Tannehill was a first-round pick that had been traded. So just because you're in that position, Charlton, does not guarantee you success in the league.
Isn't that amazing? You got to always make sure you have a backup plan. You got to have options. Big C, the San Francisco 49ers, would you believe they have the 12th youngest team in the NFL? 12th youngest. They're built for the future as long as they can keep guys healthy and as long as they keep guys wanting, to stay motivated about trying to win multiple championships. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's called the rebuild process when they brought in Shanahan and Lynch, Charlton. They knew that they need to move on from some players. The only player on the team, I believe, that's still there from their last Super Bowl is Staley at left tackle.
Yeah.
So when you talk about youth and inexperience going into a game, Charlton, they possess that. But you have two guys that host that's been in the Super Bowl, and Jimmy Garoppolo has a couple Super Bowl rings.
Yeah, as a backup player, Big C, the great Jimmy Garoppolo in his first full year as a starter, he was 329 of 476 passing, 27 touchdowns. He did have 13 interceptions, almost half as many as he had touchdowns. In his prior 5 seasons, he was 236 of 361, 17 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. And that's the one thing that a lot of people, whether they like Garoppolo or not, they feel that he's at least halfway for every touchdown he's going to throw a pick. Big C, does that make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, he's evolved, Charlton. This is his first full season as a starter, and a lot of people don't realize that. How many quarterbacks in their first full season as a starter reach it to the Super Bowl? Jimmy Garoppolo has done that. So you talk about somebody being in rare company. David Woodley, you talked about him earlier for the Miami Dolphins when they lost to the Washington Redskins in '83. He was the first-year starter in the NFL to make it to a Super Bowl. So Jimmy Garoppolo has done that in his first full season as a starter also.
That's very well said. It's hard to play this game, even if you're not the reason that you win. The fact that you're on the team says a lot for any player trying to cut their teeth in the NFL. On the other side of the line of scrimmage, the Kansas City Chiefs, would you believe, they're the 16th youngest team in the NFL. And there's so much talk about, should we keep Phillip Rivers? Do we keep Tom Brady? Do we even keep a guy like Drew Brees or the great Big Ben Roethlisberger? The two teams in the NFL, they're very young. They're not old guys like a Aaron Rodgers trying to say, well, we need to put more people around them. No, they're going to younger guys that are putting it through, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, this is the movement of the NFL. You have to put a lot of young players under contract with the salary cap implications that are around because you can only pay so many players top dollar. So you got to move through the draft and hopefully you hit home runs.
You got to hit home runs. And think about that, the great Patrick Mahomes, his father used to hit home runs. He started in 31 games as a Kansas City Chiefs quarterback. He has thrown 724 completions out of 1,099 attempts, 76 touchdowns, only 18 interceptions. And had he not been injured for those 4 games, really, Big C, he would be right around. It's not inconceivable to say he'd have about 90 touchdowns, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Mr. Mahomes has done everything you could ever ask of a quarterback in his first 2 seasons as a starter in the NFL. He's only started 31 games, which is really not 2 complete seasons in the NFL. We talked about the injury that he had to come back from with the bad ankle and the dislocated kneecap. But right now, he's back in the form he had in 2018 during his MVP season.
Yeah, he really is doing a lot of great work. And I want to just take a little, we talked about his father playing baseball, very athletic family. I want to throw it to the world of baseball on Big C Sports. And I want to talk about the great shortstop Derek Jeter and outfielder Larry Walker. They were elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame on Tuesday. A lot like, Tom Flores should be in the NFL Hall of Fame. They shouldn't keep him out. But give me your thoughts on the great Derek Jeter as an outfielder and Larry Walker elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame today. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Jeter was just known as the captain of the New York Yankees. He spent his entire 20-year career with the Yankees. He was a bona fide all-star, 14-time all-star selection, Charlton. He won 5 World Series championships with the Yankees, and he's always going to be known as the greatest Yankee ever. And now he's part owner of the Florida Marlins.
Isn't that amazing, Big C? I know a lot of people didn't like how he got rid of a lot of the players down there, but he just need some time to figure out how to make things work down there in Florida. Jeter also played all of his 20 seasons for the New York Yankees after being drafted the 6th-round pick in the 1992 amateur draft as a high school player out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. He was a 14-time All-Star and 5-time world champion, as you mentioned, Big C. But as we talk about ownership for, men of color in the NFL, it's good to see that he's able to climb that ladder, even though it's in baseball. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's what you do. You look at career after sports. Everyone puts so much emphasis on the game. What are you going to do when you get out of the game? We don't think about players' career after that. I was going through the internet yesterday myself, and I saw where I'd lost a former teammate of mine, Charlton, who had passed away just a few months ago and didn't even know it. Just happened to find it on the internet as I was doing research for former teammates. We don't always know what the flight's going to be after the game.
Yeah, I know. There was the great Marshawn Lynch for the Seattle Seahawks. Then, played Buffalo, Seattle, and then back to Seattle. Came out of University of California, Berkeley. Played high school over in the Bay Area. And he talked about, you can't take anything for granted. Every day is a blessing. We just got to open that present and enjoy that blessing. I want to also talk about, as we spoke about the great Derek Jeter, Larry Walker. He spent 17 years with the Montreal Expos, Colorado Rockies, and the St. Louis Cardinals, winning the 1997 National League MVP. He also won the National League batting crown in 1998. He also won 7 Gold Gloves during his career. That means he had to have a glove on at least 2 hands, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about the great Larry Walker, one of the greatest professional hitters in the National League during his career, Charlton, he was drafted, think about this, he's a Canadian, and he was drafted by the Montreal Expos and got to start his career in Canada, being from Ontario and playing in Canada. What a great feat for Larry Walker. In his 17-year career, he spent it with the Montreal Expos, Colorado Rockies, and the St. Louis Cardinals. And as you said, winning the MVP. He won 3 batting titles throughout his career, Charlton, and those 7 Gold Gloves, and he has now become the 2nd Canadian-born player to join Major League Baseball's Hall of Fame. The first was a pitcher named Ferguson Jenkins. I guess you'd have to call him African-Canadian.
Yeah.
Well, Jamaican-Canadian because his parents were from Jamaican descent. His dad played in the minor leagues, in the Negro Leagues, Charlton, in Detroit prior to going to Canada, playing in the Canadian Negro Leagues in baseball. And now Ferguson Jenkins and Larry Walker are the only 2 Canadians in the MLB Hall of Fame.
Isn't that something? We talk about Hall of Fames and different sports, and still want to see Tom Flores. The NFL has time to do it right. I want to also, say congratulations to those men, but also for the world of golf, Big C, as we transition to a little bit of golf. The changes to the Hall of Fame of golf is happening. It could benefit guys like Tiger Woods and even guys like Phil. You don't have to wait until you're 50 years old anymore. They're moving that up to the age of 45 years old. So players can become eligible if they are 45 in the year of the induction ceremony. And the next induction is 2021. Woods will turn 45 in January. That says a lot for a lot of young golfers because you don't have to have your career over when you're inducted into the Hall of Fame. It also can boost, ratings the way TV likes to say we have a Hall of Famer, Tiger Woods, 15 majors and 82, tournament wins, Big C. I think that's good for the world of golf, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, as a former professional athlete, that seems anti-sentimental, Charlton, because if you're being productive as a player, that's what it's all about. The Hall of Fame is recognition for what post-career is, what you did while you were active, not what you're doing while you're active. Think about if all the other sports were to reduce that down, and golf is not really a physical sport other than doing a lot of walking.
Yeah.
But, how would it sound, okay, we got Hall of Famer Patrick Mahomes playing quarterback, a Hall of Famer Tom Brady playing quarterback in the NFL, or even in the NBA. You got Hall of Famer LeBron James, Hall of Famer James Harden.
Yeah.
It seems to take a little bit of the appreciation from what those older veterans did, Charlton, who served those careers, who worked tirelessly to be the best professional that they could while they were playing, hopefully to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I think it takes away from the luster of the Hall itself.
And that may just well be the case also. And even as we juxtapose that to Tom Flores, how long is too long and how soon is too soon? I'm sure a lot of different people have their mind set on what happened. Even, just thinking about players, you got to enjoy things while you're here. There's no guarantee of anything. I mean, remember, everything that we want in life is out there for grabbing it. If you got to have the right connections, faith has to shine on your hard work. There's a lot of guys that work really, really hard, and then there are guys who are born into the royal family or marry into the royal family. It's not hard work. That's timing and who you know. But if they can give it to you while you can enjoy it, while you're alive, I'm also open to guys doing that. Speaking of that, the great Tiger Woods, he shot 20 at the Farmers Open, Insurance Open, and he returns to Torrey Pines, kind of one of his greatest courses. His eyes are set on his 83rd win. He's tied right now for the best in the universe with the great Sam Snead. If he gets to that 83rd, tournament win, Big C, it's just amazing what sports can be. Because I do believe, and we talked about it last year as Tiger won the Masters, put on another green jacket, I believe that in the next 2 years, he's going to tie Jack's record. Jack's birthday is today, actually. The great Jack's birthday is today, so happy birthday, Jack, also. But wouldn't it be something? If he can go through the next 8 majors, he could probably win 3 because I hear he's playing a lot better, but he's practicing more, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's the thing that Tiger Woods lacks his consistency, Charlton. I mean, if he's only going to want to play the majors, then Tiger's not going to get to that record this year. He has to play some of those middle tournaments so he can have more time out on the course. And so he's a great golfer in the past, but he hasn't been consistent because he hasn't been willing to put in the work.
Yeah, it's about you think that's true? And if they say it about NFL running backs, they don't say it about quarterbacks, but maybe it's true too. When guys sign their really big contract, they say the performance, it wanes, it drops off. I don't know if that's true or not, but maybe it is a business decision. Like, how hard do you really want to run the ball if you're a running back? And they already gave you $60 million like Ezekiel Elliott, or they'll say the same thing about Todd Gurley. They don't say that about Aaron Rodgers signed a $188 million deal, or Matt Ryan signed a $155 million deal. They never said how their performance dropped off, but it has also, Big C. Why they just label that for the running backs, Big C? Your thoughts?
Every quarterback that has signed that $100 million contract, Charlton, their productivity has dropped down. Jared Goff didn't make it back to the playoffs this year. Matt Ryan has not made it back to the playoffs since signing his $155 million. This has been Aaron Rodgers' first run at the playoffs since signing his $180 million contract. Russell Wilson's performance is the only quarterback with a $100+ million contract that has improved. And the reason why they don't talk about the other quarterbacks, Charlton, because they are white quarterbacks. They did not praise Russell Wilson for taking a team with no support on it other than himself, a suspect offensive line, running back by committee. Russell Wilson has been the one consistent in Seattle for the last 8 years.
Now, with that said in mind, Tiger Woods also, he has so much money, but at some point in time, everybody has a lot of money. It's like counting who has more sand on their beach. A lot of guys have beach houses. I doubt if they're out there counting who has the most sand. But we know it's all fair, love, and war, and people do what they want to do. I just wish him nothing but the best, and I hope that he can win get that 18th major in the next 3 years. I give him 8 tournaments to do it, and I would like to see that get done as we're still young men. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker.com. The apps that I love are by Google and Alexa. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports Podcast. You can also follow Big C Sports Podcast on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. I was watching a little bit of NBA. There's only one game tonight. That's the Clippers and the Dallas Mavericks. But the Lakers got had by Boston last night, Big C, over in Beantown. But what I saw was the Houston lost again to the OKC Thunder, and Harden had one of his worst shooting performances. I think he's 1 of 17 from 3. And I mean, what's going on with that, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, at times you get tired. If you look at Harden last year in the playoffs, Charlton, you could see that his legs were not there. Maybe his shoulder and arm were a little tired. And if you think about you leading the NBA in scoring, averaging 37 points a game, and 80% of that is coming from jump shots, and you're not shooting 50% from the floor, you're launching the ball quite often.
Yeah, launching it quite often. So I wish them all the best. Should be a good contest tonight with the Clippers. Also, the Dallas Mavericks. NBA is still fantastic, even though I think it takes a back seat to the Super Bowl until the Super Bowl is over. I want to just pay a little bit of homage in the final 5 minutes to our high school, football brethren, as we talk about what's going to get players staying east or playing west, staying west. I know there's a thing about California's top 7 ranked high school quarterbacks are leaving the state for greener pastures. DJ Ukulele from St. John Bosco, Bellflower. They're actually the national champions according to the Big C Sports and a lot of high school beat writers around the country. There's also, and he's going to Clemson, Bryce Young out of Mater Dei. He's going over to Alabama. These two players, when you think about how good they've been, and all the college coaches agree and the scouts agree, these two teams have won the last 3 national championships. Mater Dei the last 2, and St. John Bosco this year. They're also in the same league. They're going out of the state. There's a couple of other players that come out of California that are going to other places too. C.J. Stroud, Rancho Cucamonga, Ohio State. Jay Butterfield from Liberty High School in the Bay Area, going to Oregon. Shane Ellsworth out of Norco, California, going to Oklahoma State. There's Luca DeMont out of Venice High School going to Duke. Ethan Garber out of Corona Del Mar going to Washington. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you got to wonder, how many Pac-12 schools are in California? I believe there's 4.
Yeah.
You got UCLA, USC, Cal, and Stanford. None of those Pac-12 schools were attractive enough to draw one of the top 7 quarterbacks out of the state of California. They were all leaving the state. And you think about 2 of them when you talked about the kid Ukulele and Bryce Young from modern day. Those 2 players, Charlton, are going to schools that have won 2 of the last 3 national championships on the college football level. So they're looking for big-time opportunities. And then you also look at C.J. Stroud going to Ohio State. They were in the college football playoffs. Jay Butterfield going to Oregon. They were in the Rose Bowl. So when you talk about the plight of California Pac-12 schools and why they aren't looked at on a national level, you got to wonder what the high school players are thinking about also when they're taking their talents to the top teams in the country.
Well, I think oftentimes numbers, this is why I like to Google, Big C. Numbers will point things out. California is considered the top high school football state, and also Florida. So California's been crowned the national champion in the last 3 years with Mater Dei and St. John Bosco. Let's go over to Florida. That's known as a football power. For my SEC brethren, the top 7 high school football players of every position in the state of Florida, which is the number 2 state for high school football. That's where you have Miami, you have Florida, you have Florida State, Central Florida, South Florida, Florida International, a lot of good programs. Nolan Smith, IMG Academy, he's a player that's going to Georgia. He's leaving the state of Florida. He's leaving the Florida programs. You have Trey Sanders, he's out of IMG Academy. He's leaving the state of Florida. He's going to Alabama. You have Evan Neal out of IMG Academy. He's leaving the state of Florida. He's going to Alabama. You have Tyree Stevenson. He's out of Florida. Hometown is Homestead, Florida. He's leaving the state of Florida, going to Georgia. You have Frankie Ladson. He's out of South Dade, Miami. He's going to Clemson. He's leaving the state of Florida. Number 6, there's a Jordan Battle out of St. Thomas Aquinas. They just won the Florida State National Championship. He's going to Alabama. He's leaving Florida. The number 7 guy, matching California's quarterback, is Ka'ir Elam. He's out of North Palm Beach, and he's the only one of the top 7 staying in the state of Florida. So it's not just a California thing. It's about players and sometimes wanting to go to a different place. And I want to finish with this, Big C. For players all over the country, if we rank players based on what schools are better, what conference is better, I want to look at the bowl records for this final season that we just completed with LSU beating Clemson. The SEC is an 8-2 record in bowl games. 8-2, that's the number 1 conference. The number 2 team, that's the Blue Blood Conference. The Mountain West, they were 4-3 in bowl games. They won 57% of their conference games. 4-3 record out of 7 bowl games. Number 3, which is number 2 really because it's tied, the Pac-12. They're 4-3 in bowl games. 57% of their games they won. More than the Big Ten. They were 4-5. They won 44% of their games. And then the ACC, which has Clemson winning, their conference teams every year. The ACC is only 4-7 in the bowl game. So when it comes to players leaving, it's not that California is losing players. Even the top state like Florida, they're also losing players because sometimes people just want a different place to go play. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, when you talked about those players leaving Florida, where did they go? They went to Alabama and they went to Clemson. They went to those teams that compete on the national level for an opportunity for a championship. And that's the reason why those schools stay consistent. And you talked about the bowl production. You look at those teams that lost in bowls. When you talk about Clemson, they lost in a national championship game. LSU won that championship game. So you talk about the SEC, what they did in bowl games. You talk about the Mountain West, what they did in bowl games. Were any of those bowl games at the Mountain West in reputable New Year's Day games? That's what you got to look at. What time are those games being played? There's 47 college bowl games out there. 40 of them really mean nothing when you look at the landscape of college football. As far as when you look at the attendance in those stadiums, you're looking at some of those games, Charlton, that those teams played in.
Yeah.
They had 20,000, 15,000 people in those stadiums. So who really watched it? I know you can say about conference dominance as far as bowl victory percentage, but what was the significance of those games? When you talk about those conferences, how many of those conferences that you said won the bowl title ended up in the Pac-10 in the top 10 with teams? Only Oregon of the Pac-12 ended up in the top 10. The rest of those conferences that had teams that win bowl games, they probably weren't even in the top 25.
Well, think about the Big 12. They were 1-5 in bowl games, but Oklahoma gets to the college football playoffs, and that's why they're going to expand the bowl games, Big C. If it's left up to media and not played on the field, then you're always going to get the heavy late in the media and say, well, we're going to go SEC, are we going to go Big Ten, are we going to go ACC? Well, only one conference won more bowl games than the Pac-12, and that was the SEC. But if you leave it up to media to vote on who gets in, you're always going to have a bias. That's why they're going to expand the bowls.
But when you put those, you want a 6-6 and a 7-5 team playing for a national championship. It only takes six wins to qualify for a college bowl game. You can't say that a team that has won 6 games on the regular season or 7 games on the regular season and lucks up and wins their conference championship is bona fide to play for the national championship when they've lost to some teams that don't even have winning records.
Well, people can say what they want, but if the Pac-12 out of the Blue Blood, the Power 5 conferences, if they had the second best winning percentage playing in bowl games, that means playing teams from other conferences, you cannot keep leaving that conference out. If that's the case, then let's not have any bowl games and just play your own conference championship. I think they got to expand it so people can play themselves in, but it's an argument we'll keep having. And I love when we can Google things and people can Google that fact too. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, we got a week and a half to build up with Super Bowl hype, and everything will be dissected about both teams, both coaches, both organizations. So as soon as this week is over, we can start getting ready for spring football and college football.
It was brief. You know those good old boys down south are already having it, Big C. That's what I hear. But you can always find out every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.